Well, welcome back everybody to Motorsport Manager and the Haas playthrough. And welcome back to what's likely to be a pretty unnatural episode. Windows decided, in their great wisdom, in their latest update, to have a bunch of GDPR related stuff, which means you have to accept or deny certain settings. And one of them, which I didn't realise at the time, would block access to my microphone in certain apps, including Shadow Play. So the microphone wasn't working, so we have to try and do this episode retrospectively, which is going to be difficult because it's normally such a natural thing of commentating at the time as to what is going on. But it was a race I didn't really want to redo, and that reason will become apparent. But of course we're down to 6th in the championship then. We have an outside chance of maybe coming back at Force India or Red Bull. I think Williams are a bit too far away, but it's pretty unlikely. We know our place. We've obviously stopped spending on the car pretty early on in the season after having such a good start, and it's all about saving up and building for next year. So as you can see, we're just trying to do our last few little upgrades on reliability and performance, eking that last little bit out of our car, and taking a little look at the scouted drivers. Now, we were looking at potentials for next year. I think it's going to be either Ricciardo or, as some of you guys suggested, Rosberg is another good call. I think Rosberg only gets unlocked once we get the scout facility up to level 1 or level 2, whichever the one is that we're building. So when that finishes in about 6-7 weeks, we'll be able to scout Rosberg and make our choice between Ricciardo and Rosberg. In terms of American drivers, I think what quite a few people pointed out is that even with scouting, the drivers we've got are probably the best available. We are scouting Del Dole here, who I don't believe is an actual driver. I think this is a driver the game has added in, even with this mod. I might be wrong. I might have to check that, and you guys can let me know. But he's an incredibly promising young American. His fitness is awful, apparently because he's written a cookbook. I presume that's from eating unhealthily whilst making the cookbook. But the rest of his stats are fairly impressive. His feedback's okay at 8. At 19... he is an extremely exciting prospect, so that might be our hope of an American driver in the future. So we're going to favourite him, and we will come back to look at him and potentially add him as our reserve driver for next year. I'm pretty sure we are going to let Ferrucci go. Now we've got a vote here as a reverse drivers championship grids, something that's used in some sort of touring car and GT racing, not really got a place in Formula 1, to be honest. Although it might help us out in the next season or two if the rule didn't get reversed by the time we hopefully hit the front of the field. It could affect us very badly, and it is rejected. Only just though, to be fair, but we do hold on to our votes. For some reason, Toto Wolff with Mercedes deciding he thinks that's a good idea, which, when considering that their car's dominance, would probably be disastrous to their championship. It would be pretty fun to see how everybody got on, but at the same time I feel it's against Formula 1 as well, but we abstained and it's been rejected anyway. Right, Joey Hen's scout report come back, nothing really special there, so as per usual we will go with our usual split of 654 for the tyres. We're here in Phoenix then, which has been incredibly kind to us over the last few years, and particularly in the Motorsport Manager single-seater base game series. That's a mouthful. So hopefully we can have a good result here. You know, we've qualified in the top 10 for the last few races, and we were getting points consistently now, which we weren't during the middle of the season. But it's just not quite enough points to compete with our Williams, who is getting most of their points, or the Force Indias or Red Bulls. But you never know. This is a track we normally do pretty well at, and we could do with a decent haul of points here. So we're out on our first qualifying laps, and as per usual we're just aiming for the top 10. Practice went okay. we really struggled getting Magnussen's setup right. Sorry, I'll get it out eventually. Which means he was quite hampered in terms of getting practice time in, because we had to keep bringing him back in and then sending him back out again. And he is obviously our main driver in terms of feedback, something we're going to lose next year, but hopefully Ricardo Rosberg will be pretty good in comparison. But time's looking okay, just a tenth between them, tenth and a half between them, but we are right up there with with Leclerc and Magnussen. Surprising, isn't it? A tenth and a half in Formula 1 is such a big gap, and the gap between the two drivers is enough to split them by about 5 places. But we're looking okay after the first runs. Hopefully the second runs we can improve a bit, and especially with Magnussen, try and get him back towards that top 10. But let's not forget, we're going to be going on quite a different strategy here, I'd imagine. The one stop is what always does really well for us here, so I'm pretty sure we'll be trying it again. But obviously the higher up the grid we can get, the better weekend we can potentially get out of it. As you're about to find out, once again I make the god-awful mistake of sending them out too late. Send them out now, Jay. You see, retrospectively we can shout at ourselves, and now we're realising that we're just not going to get out in time. We send them out anyway, but yeah, I always try and eke it out to get that last little bit of track grip available, but I know that it's got to be at least 30 seconds above the lap time, and how I can still at this point be failing to get a final qualifying lap in, well, it's embarrassing really, isn't it? But we don't get a chance to improve. As a result, Leclerc drops down another 4 positions and Magnussen is 17th. So it's 14th and 17th on the grid for what should be one of the strongest races of the year, but that's not the start we wanted. And we're going to have to hope our magic strategy around here really helps us out. And into the race then. And we did a little bit of practice on the hard tyres, so we will get a little boost for what is likely to be a one-stop strategy on those hard tyres. One of these Phoenix races I'm going to remember to do all practice on the hard tyres, because we really should be getting that 15% bonus, considering we're on the hard tyres for pretty much the entirety of the race. But as we get underway then, even starting 14th and 17th, I have a good feeling that we can have a good race here and get ourselves into the points, because almost everybody that's starting on the soft or medium tyres at least will have to do a 2-stop around here. So we just need to look after the tyres and try and get as good a start as we can, and then hopefully the strategy will start to pay off later in the race. No worries about reliabilities around here either, and we will start the race on a high fuel setting to try and get ourselves upfield, as I said, above those other hard tyre runners. That's going to be the crucial thing, because as long as we can get ahead of them, as soon as everybody else stops, we're then at the front of that queue, and then it's going to be all about trying to save the tyres and the fuel for late on to defend from the fast running 2-stoppers coming back through, probably on the soft tyres at the end of the race. But it's been a good start then. Leclerc's got himself up into 13th, and Magnussen's 15th, and as you can see, apart from we're ahead of most of the hard tyre runners. Alonso is going to be one that Magnussen needs to get himself past as soon as possible. But we're ahead of Giotto, Hulkenberg, Markelo and Kielwitz, which is going to be crucial for later on in the race. Say, temperatures here in Phoenix, as always, incredibly hot. So we're going to conserve the tyres and try and go as deep in. We obviously, in an ideal world, it would be 2 16-lap stints, but obviously the fuel is less for the final stints. They can probably go a bit further. But if we can get them as deep into the race as possible, and then that gives us as much fuel as possible at the end of the race to help defend against what are going to be, as I say, some very quick cars on the soft tyres. But at this point, everything under control. We're right where we need to be. We could do with getting Magnussen past Alonso, which I think we'll try and address in a couple of laps. It's quite weird doing this after the fact, to be fair. So we're going to try and get used to doing this throughout the course of this race. It's also quite difficult when you know what's going to happen. but you guys will find that out soon, I'm sure. There's a few frame rate issues in this. I don't know why. This game has really struggled with it the last few times I tried to record it. Every time you move the camera, it's fine again. It just seems to get caught up on a hitch for some reason. We're going to try and get Magnussen past Alonso now, which is going to be crucial. We're going to use the boost down the main straight. Such a long straight here. I was thinking, I think, during this, how cool... Well, it'd be quite cool if some of these tracks were actually got made in some sim games to see how they would race. Because obviously they're based off the real tracks, but they're obviously made different in certain elements to try and avoid copyright and such. We're going to try and get Leclerc past a few cars here. You've got Gasly, Kvyat and Ricciardo really struggling on the soft tyres, and they are definitely going to have to two-stop. We get ourselves in between the two Toro Rossos there. But yeah, I was thinking it's quite an interesting track, because when you look at like the Indy road course and Daytona road course, they don't use quite as much of the oval as this does. And I think it'd be quite an interesting track to race on. Maybe someone will do that one day. Or some of the sims where you can build tracks. Maybe I'll look into doing it. Probably not. That sounds like far too much effort, to be fair. So those three guys pulling in and changing their soft tyres early on. And at this point, we're looking really good. Tyres have held up well. We're still well over 60%. We're about halfway through our first stint, so it's looking promising for being able to maybe extend this stint a bit and go long on have to go shorter on the hard tyres at the end to leave us more rubber to defend with. But at the moment we're still in tow of those guys that haven't stopped, and as you see, the final sort of soft and medium tyre runners starting to make their first stops now. We have a really good advantage over them. Verstappen is the front running of the one-stoppers, apart from Vettel, obviously, who we actually still managed to stay ahead of. But we've got a good sort of 17-18 seconds on those guys. And they've not got onto quick tyres. You know, Verstappen and Gasly, they're onto the hard tyres. They're not going to be that much quicker than us, and they're going to have traffic. So, once again, the Phoenix strategy working well for us at this stage. Tyres holding up really well. We do start looking at doing some fuel savings soon though, but we want to keep aggressive at this point whilst everybody's stuck in traffic and we got some nice clean air. The two Williams ahead of us are another target. Obviously Auer might be on a similar strategy to us, potentially one stopping, but he has taken quite a bit more life out of his hard tyres than we have. And now everybody finally making their first stop then. And it leaves us in 3rd and 5th positions. Leclerc's even managed to come out ahead of Hamilton, which shows that we've had really good pace on these hard tyres and we've still got a lot of life left in them. We do turn the fuel down now, just to try and claw some back. And we want to get into the positive by the second half of the final stint, so that we've got some fuel to play with to defend. As I say, this strategy always pays off as long as you remember to keep fuel and tyres for the end of the race, because obviously you've got cars coming through a lot quicker. But Perez is holding on nicely on those medium tyres, but still isn't going to be enough to take the hard tyres to the end, so he's still got to be two-stopping as well. Auer is looking less likely to do a one-stop by the second, as Hamilton finally gets past Leclerc, which is to be expected. We're not really racing those guys. At the moment we're looking at maybe sort of 5th or 6th place for Leclerc, and Magnussen's not far behind at this stage, only 3 seconds between them as he's coming under some pressure from Vettel. But as I say, the guys that are putting on the hard tyres, and they're not that much quicker. As you can see, Vettel is really struggling to find a way past Magnussen. But we're just trying to look after tyres as much as possible. We'll say that overheat, they're very cold at this point. But considering the pace on it and the extra life we're managing to get out of them, because there's only about 2 laps until we would theoretically be looking to pit. And as I say, every lap we can go over is 1 lap less the hard tyres have to do on the second stint. And still Magnussen has an advantage over Vettel. And I think that's going to be extended now as we're going to use the boost that we've got available down this incredibly long straight. Probably the most effective track for the ERS, and we use it for Leclerc and Magnussen there. saving a little bit, because 100% is a bit too much for the straights. And we'll use a little bit down the next one, but you can see there, that's just pulled Magnussen an extra 2 seconds ahead of Vettel, and he's not going to be in any hurry to catch him back up. Now the crucial thing for the one stop is making sure you don't get stuck in traffic when you come back out, because if you get stuck behind a potentially slower car that's got one more stop to do, that can ruin your afternoon. So we're starting to go a bit harder, I think. In the next lap or two we will look to start pushing, bring the tyre temperatures back up and using every last little bit of rubber available to us before our one and only stop. But yet again, I struggle to comprehend why the AI don't do one stops on this track, because it's not even marginal, it's pretty easy to do, and it's why we always do so well here, because almost everybody, I think, at this stage is nailed on to a 2-stop. So we have started to push a bit harder now. Magnussen's used a little bit more tyres than Leclerc, so we will bring in Magnussen first. And then, as I say, it's all about where he comes out. If he comes back out in traffic, then we're going to be in trouble. If we can get him in between Kvyat and Alonso, that's going to be the bit of free track we want. So we are pulling Magnussen in now then, and he'll have 14 laps to do on these hard tyres, and has comfortably made it to the end of this stint. Again, we want a good pit stop. That's another thing that can really hurt us. Leclerc will come in the lap afterwards then. And I'm starting to dream of some pretty big points this weekend, and God knows we need it if we're going to do anything about Force India or Red Bull or even Williams ahead of us. But Magnussen does come back out in that gap, almost inch perfect. He's got 7 seconds ahead of him to Gasly, and he's comfortably 5 seconds ahead of Alonso. So Leclerc will be looking to get back out in that gap as well, maybe even ahead of the Toro Rossos, depending on how well he's been able to push in the final bit of this stint. And you can see he does actually come back out ahead of Gasly. And there was only, I'm sure there was only 3 or 4 seconds between the two of them, but Leclerc really seems to have been able to pull it out in the pit stops. And you can just see how well this strategy is working. We're on fresh tyres, we've got plenty of fuel to play with. The tyres will easily get to the end of the race, and we're already in the top 10 before everybody's made their second stop. So we just need to keep everything under control. We'll keep saving fuel for a few more laps, probably till 0.5, 0.6, and then that should be enough to go on high fuel mode to the end of the race. Obviously, as it is the end of the season, reliability is almost bulletproof, so we can push as hard as we want on the cars. As you can see, we actually go and have a little check there just to be sure, because you're never sure on these long straights. It may well be damaging the engine gearbox too much, but we're fine because we've been saving fuel for the last 10 laps, so we haven't even gone that hard on the engine. So Leclerc coming under a little bit of pressure from Gasly, Magnussen likewise with Alonso, but it really doesn't matter because obviously they're both going to have to stop again. Stroll has made his second stop and come back out in 12th, so that's the kind of gap we're playing with. It's around about 9 seconds we need to defend. But again, Stroll has put the hard tyres on, so there's barely any difference between the lifespan of them. And although that Williams is faster, it's not necessarily faster in the hands of Stroll, it's our that's normally the problem. So I'm fairly confident we can hold a 9-second advantage between now and the end of the race. So we're just looking ahead now. We've got Auer and Perez still to pit. Bottas and Vettel may well be in range as well, but I think a podium might be a bit far-fetched this afternoon, considering their pace, because yeah, with about 9 laps left, they're going to be at least on the mediums, maybe even on the soft tyres, and they're going to be coming through a lot quicker. But how this normally works is as long as we can keep them behind until 4 or 5 laps to go, the softer compounds normally drop off enough for us to actually have a pace advantage, as long as we keep these in good shape. We've turned the engines up now, we've done enough fuel saving, and now this is the part of the race that everything has been building for. Making sure we've got enough tyre life and fuel to really attack this final part of the race and hopefully hang on to some pretty serious points this afternoon. Because I mean, at this stage, Auer is only 7 seconds ahead of Leclerc, and it's going to be at least 25 seconds to take a pit stop round here, 20-25. So we should easily clear Auer and maybe even Perez, and the three of them are in this time around them, and Leclerc comes out just behind Vettel. And considering Vettel was just behind Magnussen before, that shows that Leclerc has had really good pace, despite this strategy obviously being the main reason we are where we are. The car's also got some good pace around here, which helps. Obviously we've got a really good engine and gearbox in our Haas, and that really helps down this long straight. Magnussen has managed to stay ahead of Perez as well then, and Bottas has come back out in between the pair of us. Our pits now then, and Magnussen is going to get past, and Auer actually comes back out in 9th place then on the soft tyres. And with 9 seconds between Magnussen and Auer and 3 cars between them, it's very unlikely that he's going to be able to catch that gap. So it's going to be all about holding on to the positions we are now. Leclerc, he might be able to get a podium. You never know. He's obviously got the Mercedes of Bottas behind. That gap around about 3 seconds. But Bottas again, also on the hard tyres and a very similar age. Despite Bottas just pitting, I don't know if he's going really hard on them or whether they're an old set. Maybe Mercedes didn't bring many hard tyres to the race, which stuns me really, because we all know what this track is like. And as you can see, everybody has done a 2-stop race, and it's so easy to do a 1-stop. It almost just gifts you a good result here, but you still have to manage the car, and that's what we need to do in these final 4 or 5 laps. The tyres are at exactly 50%, so we've got plenty of rubber left, so we can probably start pushing. I mean, Leclerc has looked after them beautifully. 58% left with 4 laps to go. We can really pick up the pace if we need to, but I'm not sure we do. That gap is not coming down. I mean, Bottas has taken a couple attempts out of him, but that's about it. And Magnussen has got Perez, Raikkonen and Stroll. Well, actually Stroll's quite a way back. Both the Williams shouldn't be a threat. And Stroll's actually really harming Auer's race at this point. So Perez is the only real threat to Magnussen. And obviously Raikkonen behind. But that gap is yo-yoing around sort of the 1 to 1.5 second gap. And he should be able to maintain that. Bottas starting to make a charge on Leclerc now, but it's still 3.5 seconds. Not really much of a charge. I was looking at the wrong one there, to be fair. Magnussen is the only one in danger. Leclerc's got this under control, surely. I mean, this would be huge. I think this was the site of our first podium last year for this Haas team, and it would be great to repeat it here with Leclerc. And we've actually now started to push on the tyres, because with 2 laps to go, we have fuel and tyres to burn. And we may as well finish this race with a flourish, because Perez is dropping back 2.5 seconds now after we've just used the energy boost. Leclerc now is 3.5 seconds over Bottas. And it will take some kind of catastrophic failure on the cars for us not to finish here. And we decided to have a bit of fun on the final lap. We're so in control, we may as well do it emphatically. I think we're actually going to go up to attack and overtake mode on both cars. I don't know why we're hovering over the pits. It's strange when you're commentating back on it, because you don't see these little things. But let's not take away from what is about to happen then. It's going to be, at long last, another podium for the Haas team. Leclerc comes across the line in 3rd. Magnussen holds on to 5th and actually makes it comfortably home in 5th ahead of Perez and Raikkonen. And it's a huge haul of points for us. And with Red Bull, I mean, Verstappen has 1 point in 10th. The Williams are 8th and 9th, and Perez is the only Force India scoring. So we're going to make up ground on all of them here. And once again, the 1-stop is just hugely overpowered. Not quite sure if we really deserve it. I mean, hey, we got to take it. You've still got to do that one-stop strategy, and I feel if we really go for it next time out in Phoenix and remember to do all the practice on the hard tyres, we could have an even better result next year. But it's all about today. It's all about a podium for Charles Leclerc. I don't quite know what the stats are. I know we've had one win this year, which I think was Leclerc. I think that was our only podium. Unfortunately, because I'm doing this retrospectively, I can't actually go in and check, which is something I would like to do. But we'll do that at the end of the season, of course. But if Charles Leclerc wasn't already incredibly highly rated on the grid, he is now with that incredible podium. And that cements him in 7th, actually moves him back up ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Magnussen moves ahead of Verstappen. And it means that we jump from 6th to 4th in the Constructors' Championship. 8 points over Force India, 11 over Red Bull, and we're just 7 behind Williams now. Now, we know it's a one-off. We know this race is pretty easy to get a decent haul of points at. But if we can somehow get ourselves, a sort of a 6th or a 7th in the next race and do the same in the final race, we have a chance of holding on to 4th place. It's put us right back in that fight. So we're second actually in terms of the drivers this week, the teams this weekend. For some reason that hasn't improved Gene's mood at all, or the marketability. Not quite sure why. I mean, a podium at your home race. Come on, Gene, smile a bit more. Although he is, I guess that's a smile. Some good improvements once again from Leclerc and from Magnussen. Not in the feedback department from Leclerc. That is our big problem at the moment, and hopefully we can make some big improvements on that in terms of who we replace Magnussen with next year. And that's going to be it. That's 3 million in the bank then, and I think we're in a great position for next season financially, and hopefully we can build the best car possible next year. Although you never know, because you never know which engine's going to be best from season to season. And it may well be even more expensive. I think we spent 67 million on the car last year. So we do need to keep saving, and hopefully we will have enough to build the best car we can. Next time out in Rio then, we got some rain on the horizon, which gives us a good chance of getting a decent result again. Leclerc's normally pretty good in the wet. And to be fair, even though he's probably he's almost definitely on his way next year. Kevin Magnussen has really improved in the last few races, and he's still got 59 points to his name. That's still pretty impressive for the young Dane. So that's going to be it for this episode. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Sorry it's been a little bit of a break since the last one. Sort of took a half a week off or whatever. Just sort of recharge and get motivated to do it again. And of course I was met with another Windows update problem, which didn't help all that much. Hopefully it's not been too painful having this commentated after the fact. I've got to get back in the swing of it anyway, because we've got some more F1 on the way. F1 2018 is returning for Season 2. Hopefully this week with the first race in Australia. So as always, thank you for your continued support. Keep the comments and advice coming, and I will see you again next time.